Welcome to the Crypto on the Block radio show, featuring industry pioneers and CEOs across various industries in blockchain and cryptocurrency. Here's your host, Matthew Loughran.
Hello and welcome back, everybody, to another show of Crypto on the Block. Again, your host here, Matthew Loughran. Today, we have a great show in store for you. We have a co-founder of Fr8 Network, Mr. Jon Fox, on the show with us. Fr8 Network is a set of decentralized applications designed to streamline the freight industry's fractured value chain with transparently connecting key stakeholders, removing high-cost arbitrage, and redistributing revenue. It's quite the endeavor of a project. And Jon, very happy to have you on the show. Welcome.
Matthew, thanks for having me.
Great. Again, thanks for joining us today. I know you know how busy things are with where you are in the stage of the company right now. So we'd just love to hear maybe you give us a little bit of background about yourself as well as Fr8 Network.
Okay, sounds great. Yeah, you nailed it. We are traveling the world right now promoting our platform, and I'm on a plane pretty much every day, so I'm glad I could stop and take some time with you. Fr8 Network is attacking, to start, the domestic freight industry in the U.S. It's a $700 billion marketplace of goods being moved over the road every year. And this marketplace is made up of 15 million trucks. What's shocking about it is that 90% of the trucks are owned by companies that have 6 trucks or less. So the blockchain technology is incredible at bringing together fractured markets and letting them have really strong data about who they're working with. I've been in logistics and supply chain for 20 years. I've spun up a bunch of mid-sized companies in the space. And I actually currently own a distribution company that moves food all around the U.S., and we spend millions of dollars a year on freight. So this company was really born out of the frustration of being a shipper. And our problems are just like everyone else's problems. Trucks are getting lost, they're late, we don't know who we're dealing with. And Fr8 Network is an attempt to sort of heal the problems of the domestic freight industry for shippers and for truck drivers.
It sounds like, sounds like you've had a finger in quite every kind of section of this specific industry, kind of knowing those problems firsthand. I love to hear that when I speak with entrepreneurs and that where they know the industry problems and they're actually providing a solution to something that they've dealt with. So they really have that, that intimate knowledge of what's going on within that market.
Yeah, we're kind of strange in this way that we're building a cryptocurrency-backed blockchain marketplace that we actually want to have operate this calendar year. So we actually are finishing our MVP, or minimum viable product, on March 31st, and we'll be shipping freight on it. And, I see a lot of blockchain projects that are really brilliant and attacking some really large problems, but the technology isn't quite there yet. And so they're going to take a few years to kind of really get off the ground. But I've been shipping for 20 years. I've had the frustrations of moving pallets around the country and moving truckloads around the country, and I've imported thousands of containers. And we wanted to just solve the most simplest problem, moving a full truckload of goods around the U.S. and making that a simple process, like a Google search, to find out, what the right truck is and how to ship stuff. So yeah, I've taken all my experience and kind of put it into a very simple platform that we're starting before we start going after our big, hairy goals.
That sounds like you made a great point there, and maybe we should ask a follow-up question. That's obviously, it sounds like there's some problems within this industry. It's something you've had that frustration for, as you said, now 20 years. So within the industry, where do you think the specific gap is in a market that Fr8's really looking to fill?
Okay, so I'll give you a little overview of the industry. There are 15 million trucks, right? We talked about those being a really fractured small business market. There's 250,000 manufacturers and 300 distributors who need to ship goods around the U.S. Likewise, they're all small businesses, right? There's only 4,000 manufacturers that have over 500 employees. So let's go back 80 years when we were using railroads as the primary utility for moving goods around the U.S. It was pretty simple. You knew, there was 10 railroad companies. You knew the reputations. You knew where the cars were going and when they arrived. But when we started using trucks as the main way to transport goods around the U.S., things got really messy. And thousands of trucking companies popped up. And there was no way to really link manufacturers with these trucking companies. So that's where the freight brokerage business was born. The freight brokerage business is really good at certain things and really bad at certain things. They're really good at cataloging trucks and knowing the reputation and how well that truck driver delivers, or if they're always late or losing freight. And they're good at finding a truck and moving it from point A to point B. What they're not good at is really caring about if a shipper gets the best quality truck and experience they can have, and they're not good at caring about if truckers have unused capacity. So, like, two big problems in this industry are that there was, first of all, 30 billion miles driven empty last year in the U.S. That means that approximately trucks are driving around empty a third of the time. Truckers are making $40,000 to $43,000 a year. They're barely getting by. It's not an attractive profession when you can drive an Uber, make more money, and be home at night. And so how do we focus on making more efficiency in the truckers market? On the manufacturer side, the problem is that they don't know how to connect with a shipper without going through a broker who charges a 20% markup. The reason for this is there are load boards that basically operate like Craigslist, and any shipper can log on to them, like truckstop.com or DAT or Post Everywhere. But when they log on, all they see is what truck is available and what that trucker's driving record is. And if they pay a little extra, they can see if his insurance is up to speed. But that's the only data that they get. So brokers heal this, but brokers aren't incentivized to get you the best truck or to fill capacity. So there's a real problem with incentive alignment, right? From a shipper's point of view, if they could look at a load board and know the behavior of these truckers, and they have unique identifiers of motor carrier numbers or Department of Transportation numbers, and when I go on these load boards, I can see this guy always delivers on time, and he doesn't lose goods, and he doesn't have insurance claims. Or likewise, I can see that a bad trucker has terrible behavior. All of a sudden, we're incentivizing good behavior on a network, and that's not happening now. So we're going after the brokers in a certain way, but we're not going after all of them. To give you kind of a slice of that market, to kind of finish the overview, there are 16,000 freight brokerages in the U.S. The top line on those companies is approximately $100 billion a year. Now, the top 25 of those brokers billed $34 billion last year. So out of 16,000, a third of the revenue is in the top 25. Now, those top 25 have incredible data. We're dealing with C.H. Robinson and TQL. Every time their phone rings, they know exactly who they're talking to. They'll see the entire history of the behavior of that truck and the transactions they've had with that company. So they're extremely well informed. If we can take that data and de-silo it from those walled gardens and put it into an indelible ledger on a blockchain network, then I, as a shipper, can log on and have that same safe transaction without paying the 20% broker markup fee. Now, likewise, let's flip it from the trucker's point of view. If a trucker can log on to that system and see that, like, a warehouse has a 5-hour waiting time on average, that's half a trucker's day's work that they'll be doing for free if they don't know that. So when a broker is booking a truck to go into a warehouse, they don't care if he's sitting there for 5 hours. They just want to get their load moved and run their arbitrage business and make their 20%. So truckers that have a certain number of hours they can drive a day can now bake into their pricing that they're going to a C or D rated warehouse and either choose to not go there or put the price in there that they're going to be sitting there for a half a day so they're compensated. So what's missing from the industry are ratings on an open network. Shippers don't get to see truckers' ratings, and truckers don't get to see shippers' ratings. So we're going after the big brokerages and trying to de-silo that data, but I think we're going to help the small brokerages a lot. I work with a brokerage called MTH Logistics in the Midwest. These guys are incredible at moving cold freight around 3 or 4 states, right? It's a 2-person office, and we can absolutely rely on them to, say, move chocolate in the summer in a temperature-controlled truck. And they're great at knowing that that truck's not going to go above a certain temperature or below a certain temperature. Now, when I call up that same 2-person brokerage and say, I want to ship a full truckload from New York to California, they don't know what to do. They'll take the load, they'll price it, but then they have to go on these load boards where they have zero data and try to book the truck for me. So if we can give this kind of power of understanding national reputations of truckers to a small brokerage, they can grow their businesses nationally exponentially. And growing small businesses is what this is all about, right? When we roll up markets, the whole thing that we're doing different now than we've done in the past is that we're distributing the profits of those roll-ups to the actors in the network, right? Like, I'm super passionate about blockchain, super passionate about cryptocurrency. And what blockchains allow us to do is to have a different kind of industrial revolution. So when you look at the original barons of the Carnegies and the Rockefellers, they did these incredible roll-ups of industries, and they created great efficiencies, and they brought costs down, but all of the efficiency they created was centralized and went to create dynamic generational wealth. The difference now is when you're doing it on a tokenized, trustless network, you're actually taking all of that efficiency and moving it to the edges of transactions. So if the prices become better, that goes back into the shipper's hands. If it's more efficient and trucks are filled more of the time, that goes into the trucker's hand. There's no centralized entity in this kind of a network that's making a profit on the transactions in the network. The better the network does, the more enriched the people who participate in the network become.
Yeah, so that was very educational for me. I appreciate that, Jon, just kind of getting the back end of the industry, right, and the problems and all the different components that really go in to this specific network that we're talking about. I mean, the fact that trucks drive around with 1/3 of an empty load and are, basically driving billions of extra miles, again, that costs money, both from the shipper's side as well as the manufacturer and the trucker side. So very interesting. And it really sounds like what you're doing is pretty outstanding, right? You're really reimagining the freight market through an intelligent blockchain-based marketplace, right? You're driving efficiency, delivering cost savings, but without requiring, seems like, changes to this current business practice. You're just almost adopting the technology into it. So, I mean, what do you think the impact of this is going to have on the freight industry?
I mean, if people adopt it, it'll be massive. And you're dead right. We're not trying to change the entire industry. We're trying to let market dynamics actually work within the industry. Right? I'll give you a couple of examples. Price discovery drives markets, right? You want something, I have it, we haggle over price. But right now there's an intermediary in there called freight brokers. And so they're manufacturing price discovery, right? They're telling me a price that I can buy it at, and then they're going out to hunt for it at a lower price, where we don't actually get to negotiate and have an honest price on. So having normal market dynamics will work really well for any industry when you allow transparency. And so for a truck to be able to see the ratings of shippers and shippers be able to see the ratings of truckers, all of a sudden you've created a whole incentivization model that will actually work to organize it. Let me give you one example, right? A trucker who, say, double brokers, which is a really common incident of fraud, which is a huge problem. They will take a shipment that they're supposed to ship, and they'll quietly broker that out to another truck, right? Me as the shipper, I go ahead and pay the first trucker, and the first trucker actually doesn't pay the bill to the second trucker who actually carried the load. This causes a lot of problems. First of all, that second trucker is legally allowed to sue the shipper, or even worse, his customer. So when this happens, unless that person gets a criminal record by doing that, nobody knows. And he can go ahead and get a new load the next day. So there's no public ratings that would actually incentivize him to stop doing that or edge him off of a network by doing that. So by creating reputation, it's just a normal marketplace with normal incentives. And this is an antiquated industry. Let's remember that. Location tracking is not as sophisticated as people would imagine. I'll give you an example from a shipper's point of view. If I want to know where my goods are right now, I have to call up my broker and ask him where the truck is. Now, the broker will call the dispatch of that trucking company and ask them where the truck is. They're not sure if the dispatch is telling the truth or not, so they immediately then dial the truck driver and verify his location. And if there's a difference, he can kind of figure it out, and then he calls me back and tells me about it. It's sort of an insane process, right? And just by having an app on the trucker's phone that they're incentivized to use because they're getting better shipments out of it, all of a sudden, I got a call. All of a sudden, I know where the truck is, and it's no big deal. The phone acts like an IoT device.
Gotcha. Okay. I mean, that alone is quite helpful for, I think, all the parties involved there.
Well, if you look at, look at what, just to sort of sum that up a little bit, look what the internet did for so many industries, right? It created transparency. It let us, build a business that can reach anywhere in the world. It let stock trading become consumable by retail investors. But this didn't happen in the trucking business. The entire innovation of technology worked solely to empower brokers who now control the industry and extract 20% of the profits out of the industry, where most other businesses were empowered by the internet.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the main things too. When I look at organizations, right, that are using blockchain, I always like to see, well, what industry are they in, right? How you said, how antiquated is it, right? How much of an upgrade, can it actually happen, with this type of technology? And it seems like as well, in the logistics industry, at least, seems to be a hot topic right now for blockchain, right? You have, your Fortune 500s looking in the space, so what I really like to, maybe you can touch on as well is there's other organizations that are currently looking into logistics and freight, with blockchain and kind of want to marry a cryptocurrency with that. How are you guys really differentiated in this specific marketplace?
I'll answer that kind of in two ways. There's certainly other companies out there I can talk a little bit about, and they're not doing exactly what we're doing. There's some really low-hanging fruit to go after in the logistics industry. I feel like we're going after like the toughest problem. Like if we can fix truckers talking to shippers in America using a cryptocurrency as a use case, like we can fix anything, right? So, there's...
I like that.
Yeah, it happens to be my background and what I know really well, so it was the obvious choice. And we're figuring out pretty well, but we've realized that we're really building a large shared database, and logistics is the first use case of it. So once we figure out how that database should really operate, there's an endless stream of industries that could really benefit from it. And that's what's happening in the blockchain space now. There's less than 100 companies that have blockchains deployed that they're really using. And so this is a period of discovery where new companies are being funded to try hard, succeed, fail. There's a capitalization of the market going on that's just begun. I mean, I think we have $500 billion in crypto right now backing these projects, and I expect that to go up 5 or 6 times in the next few years. And during that time, the successes and failures of the early companies will inform, what we do later and how we actually get things right. So, like some of the low-hanging fruit in the freight industry is transfers of value, right? I have a truckload of goods. The goods on it are worth $60,000. When that gets picked up from me and gets switched onto a truck, there's a transfer of value and liability that transfers with that. A lot of times now that's happening on a handwritten bill of lading, and it's a pretty perilous way to transfer that value, but it's what we depend on often in the logistics industry. So putting something like that on the blockchain is kind of a no-brainer, right? Insurance value and being able to buy insurance and spike insurance, which you buy at the last minute when you want to buy more insurance than someone's providing. Those are really good use cases for the blockchain. Also, payment rails are a big thing. Right now, astonishingly, truckers float most of the industry. Truckers are issuing 30 to 60-day terms on their invoices, and they can't afford to do this, so truckers are factoring their invoices. Now, they're factoring them with 2 different places. One is they're factoring them with the biggest brokerages, because that's where the deal flow is, and the brokerages are charging up to 5% for a one-day pay. I know with the 2 biggest brokerages, that's their number. If you deliver their load, they're going to pay you in 30 to 60 days, or you can get paid today for 5% of your invoice. That's 60% a year. It's totally insane. So by putting that stuff on the blockchain, it now enables instantaneous settlement, if that's what the shipper and the trucker negotiate, or it allows a whole host of factoring companies to become engaged in the market and actually have competitive pricing. So truckers don't have to go out and search for a factoring company or be lazy and just go where deal flow is and kind of take the expensive credit. They'll be able to be offered all sorts of cheaper credit once you've put all this on the blockchain and commoditize those invoices into digitized transactions that people can bid on. So that's like really low-hanging fruit, and we've baked both of those things into our platform. Going after the marketplace is what I think really differentiates us. So there's other platforms now. One is going after proof of motion, where they want to be able to track anything in the world. And I haven't seen the technology that they're coming out with. It's called ShipChain, and they did a $30 million ICO, and I believe they're building technology now. And while it wasn't exactly clear to me how they were going to incentivize the adoption of IoT devices to track goods, I'm sure they'll figure out what their next steps are. Oftentimes in the cryptocurrency arena, you have companies raising a lot of money and then kind of figuring it out, which I think is okay. They had a game plan, and I think they're improving on that game plan. They're pretty focused guys. So, what exactly do they build and what do we get to use will be really interesting. And there's a company called SweetBridge out there that's going after a gigantic play. They're building a liquidity protocol globally. And so what that means is they want anyone in supply chain to be able to put their assets into the SweetBridge protocol and then borrow against that using their thing called Bridgecoin, or spend their money that they earn by loaning their assets to them to other partners in the ecosystem. So there's two things that have to happen for that to work and really be interesting. One is they either have to have a really good ecosystem where I have partners that I actually want to spend my Bridgecoin with, or they have to have liquidity so I can turn my Bridgecoin right back into dollars and actually have working capital with it. So I know that they are midway through building all of that, and I've got a keen eye on them to kind of see where they end up, because the guys who are building that are some of the smartest guys in logistics. Scott Nelson, their CEO, built a transportation management system called Trax, which is used globally and a lot of brokerages that actually run on. So they have deep knowledge of the space and I think can do really interesting things. But what they're going after is what a lot of cryptocurrency and blockchains in general are going after, and that's having a very large barter economy. All commerce, in a sense, is barter. How do we create the double coincidence of barter where you have exactly what I want at exactly the time that I want it? So that's really easy to create in small communities. Think of an agricultural community. I've got a chicken, you've got a pig. I need eggs, you need pork. Like, great, we all sort of take care of each other, right? It also works really well in a very large system where you can have a global network that trades together. And you can create, stability in that network by tuning it just right. It's a much harder one to get right, but it's actually a pretty good use case for a large barter economy. And that's what we're trying to figure out in this. The US dollar was supposed to be a perfect barter economy. And it was for a while until we started involving central banks and, we borrow all of our currency. But before the Civil War, there were actually 10,000 non-traditional currencies in the U.S., barter currencies that worked in small communities, and they worked quite well. The U.S. dollar was a nationwide barter currency that I think probably worked a lot better before we started involving central banks. The central banks were supposed to stabilize it, but actually they've devalued it to a great extent because we borrow the money and pay an incredible vig on it to the central banks every year. So, there's guys going after the big picture and guys going after the small picture. I don't know of any other company that's going after building a marketplace exactly like we are. And I think the biggest difference maker on us is that we're starting locally in America. We're going after one market, and we're incentivizing truckers and shippers to get onto that market in really specific ways. One, by doing invoice factoring, so we can get truckers to come on board because they want to factor invoices at a more fair market price. And then they're on our rails, and then they're in our marketplace, and shippers can see them. And the other is we're allowing people that are on our system, making it better, to earn freight token. So the whole idea of having a utility token is that a system will work better not having a centralized authority. If we incentivize all the people on the edges of a marketplace to make their marketplace a better place, they should be able to earn currency just by doing that. So with truckers, when they bring other truckers onto our platform, they earn freight token, and that freight token is spendable. They make the network stronger by making it bigger. The more people we have on here, the more data we have on here, the more efficient it becomes. So when a trucker earns freight token, they should be able to cash that out or spend it somewhere. And we're working on creating alliances with hotels and truck stops where, imagine a truck is driving along and we are able to send them a text saying, hey, your mandated hours are up in 45 minutes. But in 37 minutes, there's a Holiday Inn, and we can book you a room at a 60% discount if you pay in freight token. That becomes really meaningful, and they've earned free freight token by making the marketplace that they work on a better place.
That sounds like the perfect trucking concierge service to me.
Yeah, we're working on it. I mean, look, it's all token economy.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Part of like the difficult thing in this field is entrepreneurs are becoming economists. right? I've run trucking companies for a long time. I've run distribution companies for a long time. But the last year of my life has been figuring out how do we create an economy that incentivizes good behavior and incentivizes non-attrition, people to stay on there and keep making it a better place. And I'm not an economist, and I don't think most ICO projects have economists. So you've taken this mid-sized entrepreneur and have been in the room with PhD economists for the last year, tuning our system, trying to understand it. So I think where we're different is we have really focused on creating an economy with the right incentives that can work in the short term. Where I think the other projects I'm seeing out there are a little bigger and a little more aggressive in their goals, and very well could reach them, but they're not going to reach them in the time that we're able to reach our first goals.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, right? So if you look at differentiators in the market and the power of the utility, as we say, of that token, it's got to be used. So if you're building a platform which is going to have a quick rollout and a quick adoption, that means you'll actually end up getting the network effects of these compared to these other larger giant platforms. It might take them years. You might actually get there faster just because of a faster adoption rate and faster user onboarding. Now, with that as well, I mean, I know we've talked quite a bit about your differentiators. I'd love to know, what's the revenue model for you guys? Like, how you guys actually been making money with the project?
Well, our value is all tied up in the tokens. So as a founder of a company like this, I will have tokens. And it's only by my network becoming stronger and stronger that my tokens will ever really be worth anything. So you have a small fee to use the network in the first place. And the reason there's a small fee to use it is we want to prevent what's called Sybil attacks. What's to stop someone from coming on and posting 5,000 fake loads and kind of wrecking our system? So we want to make that more expensive to do than not to do, right? And that's a lot like Bitcoin mining, and the competition to mine a block is you're spending energy doing that, or you're spending money on the energy to do that. And on the whole blockchain, I should say this differently. The whole idea of blockchains are that you're incentivized to make it a better place than a worse place. It's more expensive to try to hack the blockchain than it would be to just cooperate with it. So our revenue model is pretty simple. For every shipment that is shipped on Fr8 Network, there's a small fee. That fee goes in two directions. One is distributed to the parent company, which is Fr8 Inc. in the US, and that's just to cover costs for maintaining the network. That's for our developers. It's a for-profit company, but we're not planning on having any real profits in there, and we're considering making that a not-for-profit company. The other portion of the fee goes as an incentive for people to earn Fr8 token. So if I spend $10 in Fr8 token to ship something on the network, a good portion of that is going to be going to truckers who have brought other people onto the network, or other people that are working on the network to earn Fr8 token. And there's a variety of ways that people can make the network a better place and earn Fr8 token. So you talk about going to market, we're doers. We come from these boiler room type businesses, and it's what we know. And we've built software businesses in the past, but we've built a lot of sales and marketing companies. So we know how to put 20 guys in a room and create $50 million of revenue. So in order to make our marketplace really effective, I think that we need 50,000 trucks on our marketplace in the US to create a network effect. Now, how do we get those 50,000 trucks? We're ready to put 30, 40 guys in a room selling cheap factoring services to trucks and having them onboard to our rails that way. So we actually know how to roll up our sleeves and get enough people on there so that the machine starts working. I mean, one of the big problems in building a network is how do you prime the pump, right? How do you get these people on, and how do you grow it? And, there's two ways. One is you build an elegant system of incentives, and that should work. We kind of have a backup plan. We're hoping that our system of incentives work just fine. If not, we know how to fill a room with guys selling factoring services that incentivizes people to get on the network. And we believe once they're on the network, they will have had such a good experience that they'll stick around and invite friends.
I mean, it sounds like obviously you guys have a very well thought out plan, right? You've been in the industry 20 years. You're filling a gap, with the service offering specifically as well. You have a plan in place for, the launch, getting people on the network, obviously roll that into network adoption. But I would love to maybe know, what do you see as maybe your company's biggest threat at this point?
The biggest threat to our company.
Correct.
Well, I think it's first to market is probably a big threat. There's brokerage companies that have billions of dollars in assets who are going to want to go after this space. And I think if someone provides a really great service in this space and kind of lowers their fees and does lower factoring, they could potentially roll up the space before we do, but it'll still be a centralized space and it'll eventually frustrate people and there'll be room for this. So I see that as the biggest issue. It's potentially a second issue is getting people to use cryptocurrency. So we've created an abstraction layer. Like we don't expect truckers to start taking cryptocurrency on day one. And we don't expect shippers to be using cryptocurrency on day one. So we've created a layer of freight token brokers. These are people that can own freight token simply to loan it out to other people who want to use the system. So let me explain how this works. If I'm a shipper and I log on and I do my profile, and part of my profile is I only want to work with the best truckers, A-rated. I also never want to hear about cryptocurrency, right? There will be a network of, which is very likely, right? We're talking about a guy who's, shipping lumber in the Northwest. He may not be ready to buy crypto. Although as a side note, I've talked to so many truckers who own Bitcoin and Ethereum that I think it might be a little easier than we think, but we're not counting on it because that would be a pretty big assumption. So if I'm a shipper and I've put all that in my profile, when I go on to ship my first load, let's say it's a $1,000 load, I will see a $10 fee for that. So my load will actually be $1,010. I'll just see that on the price. I'll just see that as the price. But what that actually represents is that someone behind the scenes has loaned me $1,000 in freight token for a 1% fee. And that's where the $10 comes from. So if I'm someone in the freight token brokerage business, I've joined Fr8 Network solely to buy freight tokens and loan them to other people, the average shipment is 2 days. So I can loan my $1,000 for 1% every 2 days, that same $1,000, and I can rotate it 150 times a year. 150% credit market, we think, is like a really strong incentive to bring people on to lubricate the system. So there's things that don't work with real-world adoption that could be a threat to us, but we think that we're creating elegant solutions that will make it work. The first freight token broker will actually be Fr8 Network. We reserve a big portion of our tokens to be held by our foundation just for this purpose.
Yeah, I think it solves a big question, right? Which is the mainstream adoption of the platform, and how does cryptocurrency filter in that? So you have that process already worked out, which is great to hear. And obviously, we're talking about blockchain. What blockchain are you guys building on?
Right now, we're building on Ethereum, and our MVP is on Ethereum. And we'll see if we continue that way. There's a lot of good options out there. EOS is actually an interesting platform. Stellar is really good with its payment rails. But for the moment, we're on Ethereum. The smart contract capabilities are perfect for us. And people talk about the scalability issues, but we actually believe those will be solved over time. And look, a lot of what people talk about in this industry that they're going to do, it's all a good plan. And we've all thought through a lot of the problems and how we might solve them. But it's going to be an iterative process. And any person starting a blockchain company who tells you they have all the answers is kidding themselves. These are our best guesses. We think it'll work, but part of being an entrepreneur is ready, fire, aim. And I think we have that down. But the second part is when you're wrong, quickly drop it and try something else. So being able to be nimble and iterative is going to be a huge part of success in this field.
Absolutely. And then really just kind of wrapping up, what's the best way for our listeners to learn more about Fr8 Network?
Well, on our website, Fr8.network, that's Fr8.network, we've put a video of me talking. There's a white paper if you really want to drill in. And the way the crypto community communicates is on Telegram Messenger. And I'm not sure how many of your listeners are using Telegram, but if you go to Telegram, it's t.me/Fr8 Network. And you'll see a whole conversation. We have about 9,000 people in our chat group talking about what Fr8 can and can't do for them.
Awesome. And Jon, again, pleasure having you on the show today. I know you're very busy in regards, in the launch phase right now, lots of stuff going on. It was a pleasure having you on. And again, just so people know, it's FR, the letter 8, Network, right? Is that for the website?
I think it's FR8
Yes.
.network.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
Perfect.
I appreciate you having us on. This is a great forum for us. We're doing a lot of traditional media. People can see us in NASDAQ and Forbes, and there's a lot of articles about us, and we're traveling the world. But getting on the radio is actually one of my favorite ways to hear about new projects. So being able to be on the other side of it's a really good opportunity for us. So we thank you for that.
Absolutely, John. Pleasure to have you on the show today. Again, the company is Fr8 Network. Go check them out. Again, get the information about their crowd sale right from their website. Any questions, jump in their Telegram group and ask away. So, John, pleasure, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Matt. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to the Crypto on the Block radio show with Matthew Loughran. Please subscribe, like, share, and comment. Tune in next time.